everyone on our Twitch stream and who's watching us later on YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Happy Mother's Day to everyone, and thanks for setting aside some time to listen to what we've got going on here. We have with us today Constrictor14. He's one of the developer group. We've had interviews with Hudy and Roarbee so far, and now we get some time to spend with Constrictor. Also with us is Devrin, as usual, and myself. So we're going to have open questions in the Twitch stream. Go ahead and post questions in there as they come to mind. We might answer some of them in the meantime. But let's go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Hello, Constrictor. I think this is the first time we've actually seen each other face to face via actual video chat. What is your part in the project that is Talibri?
That's a good question. So I guess it's maybe last November. So I'd been bugging Hoody's like, dude, you need some help. Your game's great, but you need some help. And and he definitely does, or did at least. So I came
Still
in.
does. I would say
Still
he
does.
still does.
Still does probably. So I came in and I kind of jumped in. I didn't know Ruby on Rails, which is what the project is primarily developed in. But I kind of like learning new languages and whatnot, so I'm much better at this point. I jumped in, did a bunch of bug fixes, did a bunch of market changes, added a bunch of more leaderboards that I know you guys liked, and then have jumped into guilds from there, and it's coming along nicely, and I definitely am going to show you some of that today with what I've got. In terms of my role, I'm definitely not driving the direction of the game right now. Hudy and Roarbee are still piloting that for the most part. So I'm providing the sounding board, coming up with some of my own ideas, but they have provided enough content for us to work on for years and not finish at this point from a plan. And I know you guys have heard lots of great ideas from them, and that's great, but it's going to take a long time to finish it all. So I don't feel like I need to provide a lot of brand new ideas at this point.
Yeah, from some of the chats I've been seeing in the MVP, they keep saying, yeah, that would be a really great system. We'll slot that in about a year and a half. So it's kind of intimidating to actually see that. But when you look at a game cycle, a game development cycle, it's realistic. But so as for actually getting into guilds, which is what we're talking about today, most of the time when we do a video, it's something that's already been out. So we actually have nitpicks about certain things and we would go into details about them, but we haven't actually seen anything on the development process of guilds. So can you tell me exactly how it's going to be changing the gameplay from what we have now?
Sure. So initially, the first glimpses you're going to get of guilds, it won't change the gameplay that much. You're going to see like a guild roster, a guild page, ability to join other people in a guild, kind of some of the interaction with that. As more and more of the features that are planned for guilds get layered on, you're going to see the gameplay shift, where suddenly guilds are going to be more at the center of what you're going to want to do. You're still going to want to be doing gathering and crafting, but on a regular basis, instead of that homepage with the queues being the first place you check, you might actually go to your guild page first and want to see what your guild mates are doing, what they're you're going to have a transaction log where you'll be able to see what's kind of going on in the guild, whether it's new members coming in or resources coming in from your gatherers or crafters. So that it's going to become more of the hub for where you might start your experience once you've decided to join one, if you do. Good question. Can we answer that?
I'll go ahead and just post those in chat as they come in.
Okay.
So that we don't have to multi-tab through all the windows.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the question was, what buildings will be available when guilds come out? The very first version of the guilds, it's more going to be just the guild itself without any additional buildings. There is a plan to add guild buildings that will help increase the size of the guild and add features. It's not dissimilar to housing, but it won't all be like active activations necessarily. Some of them will do other things for you. Some may be passive. And there are some systems that are just contained within those, and they're planned, but they're not as fully fleshed out at this point. So I can't speak to all of it. But that's definitely kind of 15th on the list of things we need to do.
Yeah. What kind of costs and processes go into making and maintaining guilds? So at the very start, when you don't have a guild, what is like the first step that you have, and what kind of stuff do you need to actually get there?
Well, your first step would be there's guild districts, so that it would be kind of a place you would go to see guilds that are in each city and create one. In the creation process, there's a flat startup cost. It's not prohibitive, especially for those of you making millions a day. It's let's see if I have it off the top of my head. I think I have it set at 100,000 right now, which I've been told is both too much and too little. Yeah, it's 100,000 Leal right now. So
Okay.
a flat entry fee. It kind of prevents people who just start the game that day from creating a guild right away and then maybe abandoning the game. So you'd have to play just a little bit, and by that I mean like a couple hours probably to get there, regardless of which direction you want to go. But it's not so high that anyone who's played for a week or 2 weeks couldn't get one if they wanted one. At least that's where my head is on that number. I've been argued that it should be nothing. I've been argued that it should be millions and millions of Leal. I can definitely see it both ways, but I think that's at least a good jumping off point. And when it gets to this test server, we can kind of play around with that and see if it, if that does seem crazy or not. I don't think it's a bad number to start at, though.
As far as like the base guild, as far as like the guilds 1.0, are there actually going to be any maintenance costs involved, or is that only for like the next stages and anything you add to it?
I think it's primarily going to be the next stages. Just having a guild isn't going to cost you anything. There won't be an ongoing upkeep or anything. I'm just about to start building the guild bank, which obviously you can't charge anything on transactions unless there's something to transact between. So those will get built in when that system is fully flushed out. But at this point, it'll just be that flat one-time cost. You have a guild on the test server at least. Probably by the time it goes to the public, we will have to keep the bank though, and you'll see some of those transactional charges. So yeah, they will be there. I know there was a question about like cross guild, kind of like alliances. That is something we're planning, so you can ally with other guilds. That's not built in at this point, but it will definitely be eventually. And that'll allow them to share resources, but that transfer between guilds is going to be subject to a transaction fee because that's one of those upkeep costs. So it's better to have everybody in one guild if you want to avoid those if possible. If you have a really, TTF sized group, yeah, you're going to incur some of those fees as you split up, and you'll see that information about that come out as we get into the guild bank and creating that. So stay tuned for that. But I would like to show you guys all of the pre-guild bank features that I was able to complete. I had 7 slotted originally for kind of my 1.0 release, and the bank was the 7th one because I figured you need to have everything else before you can get to that. We're pretty close to having 1.0 ready to start the bank changes, and then that would go out, I think. So what other questions do you have for me?
So, as far as what you start with at the very beginning of actually having a guild, like what are the limits as far as like members and or, I mean, once you actually get the bank open, what kind of capacity limits are there going to be that could actually be added on later?
There shouldn't be any capacity limits on the size of the bank. In terms of resources, types of resources, Leo, you should be able to put as much as you want in there. In terms of players, that number has shifted a little bit. I think originally Hudy was talking about having very small initial guilds, something akin to like maybe 7. I think I was arguing for something a little bit closer to 10 to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, he and I probably need to have another discussion and nail that down exactly. But it will be between those two numbers. We just haven't decided exactly where it is yet. I'm leaning more towards 10, 12 right now. And we'll see what the 3 of us come up with officially. But that might be a number that changes on the test server based on feedback once it gets out there.
Yeah, those are the kind of figures that we were looking at, that we've actually been hearing about, starting at 10, maybe upgrading 5 every single tier. If that's how it is, great. We've been right the whole time. If not, well, we have to adjust. I mean, that's kind of what we do.
Right. Those guild buildings that were mentioned earlier, that's one of those things that would play into the capacity. So you'd potentially be able to add guild housing, essentially, that would allow you to bump that number up. And I don't know if guild housing is even the right term that we want to use for that, because you already have player housing. But whatever that actually ends up being called, it would increase your capacity for the guild. And the first level shouldn't be that difficult to gain. It'll be subsequent levels. So in the sense that how construction, it's more difficult to get higher level add-ons. That will still be true for guilds. So getting a very large guild will be possible, but costly. So at some point, there's diminishing returns. And you'll have to figure that out when you get there. But we haven't coded it yet either. So there's always room for you guys to sway us one way or the other on some of that.
So there's a couple questions about fees about transferring. So I thought they might be pertinent to answer while we're still on the topic.
Sure. Not within a guild, it's between guilds. So if you had, say, 2 TTF branches of your alliance, and you wanted to trade, one of them specialized primarily in lumber, the other one in mining, they needed to do some cross trading. There would be a transaction fee for that, because they're not technically the same guild. They're an allied guilds. So there's that piece. Transaction fees, I think it would be, in terms of transferring within a guild, I don't think when you deposit, say, your 100 logs or something, that wouldn't necessarily incur like a 5, you take 5 off the top or something. I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Okay, so now for the guild itself, I mean, we've touched a little bit here and there on different aspects of how much it's going to cost. Now, an actual guild tax, is going to be imposed on obtaining Leol by combat or sales, and what sort of options are there going to be to pay it? I guess just looking for more details.
I wish I had a few more of them for you, but a lot of that is tied in. A lot of that is tied into the bank, which I haven't created yet. So
Okay.
You'll see more of that rollout as I get into that. The bank itself is going to be nicely configurable. There'll be sections, and each section will have permissions tied to it, so that you'll be able to restrict certain people from accessing them if you want to. We were also talking about potentially having like withdrawal limits on certain sections as well, so that if maybe you didn't care how much of a base resource somebody took out, but if you only had a very small amount of a ascendant level or higher, maybe you don't want them to withdraw all of it. You could potentially set those up where, yeah, if you need X amount, great. And if not, then you need to have a conversation, with the guild leaders. I actually want all of the ascendant copper or whatever. So those
short plug and aside, I mean, if he doesn't have all the details for what we're actually talking about right now, and it's going to be on test server later, Stretch and I are both on there, so we'll probably actually do a follow-up episode on this. And we've been talking about doing episodes that are based off of what we think is going to be coming up, the facts as far as what test server data is, and looking forward to new features. Then we might actually do another full one when it actually fully comes out, and our impressions on how it actually affects the game so far.
Mm-hmm.
But
So now, okay, go ahead.
that's it.
Okay. Oh, but it sounded like Brad, you're going to say something.
Now, originally there was a concept for a separate guild currency, and the transfer between Leol and that we were going to use, I think, silver pounds or something like that, and that there was a transfer rate of Leol to silver pounds, and to be able to use those, you'd have to incur some tax. I'm not sure if that ends up going in or not at this point, but that's originally where some of the tax numbers were associated. So getting Leol into the bank would cost something essentially. But that was one feature that at least I'm a little skeptical about. So I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it was almost like a meta currency of sorts.
Right. And we've had discussions about a couple different meta currencies for different upcoming features. And I think it makes things a lot more complicated to have them. I'm not necessarily in favor of that piece of it, so we'll have to see. But more on the transactional pieces is where I'm expecting the taxes to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I also remember some talks a long time ago about taxes coming from the usage of facilities that you have as a guild. That's probably not going to be anywhere close to Guilds 1.0, but tying into a question I saw in Twitch from Erasmus, he's one of the top miners of the game. He says, as a lone wolf, what benefits will I be missing out of from not being in a guild? From what I've heard about previously, and you can actually comment on this if anything's changed, guilds are actually going to be developing in those districts inside of a city to develop bonuses for being part of that city, right, for where your player housing actually resides. So whether you're actually in that guild or not, in fact, you can actually make a one-person guild if you have the money to do so. You can actually vote on things in the city to design the development further for that city. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. You will have there's a concept of a guild council, which would come obviously a little bit later. If you have a guild, you could have a voice on the council. Now, being in a bigger guild, you'd essentially be diluting your voting power. Whereas if you're in your own separate guild, you'd be a one-for-one. But at the same time, there are benefits to being grouped together. So some of those guild buildings are going to help you and your guildmates specifically. So it's kind of up to you. Yeah, if you want to have your own guild and build just the buildings that would help you, I'd say that's not a bad strategy. But at the same time, I think there's a lot to be said for having that support group and having, a lot of people to make it easier on you, to make it easier to afford more upgrades. Some of the fun features that we're going to add later, like guild versus guild type of functionality. You're not going to want to be in a guild of one if you really want to do those effectively, I think. It'll be possible, but that's a choice you're making.
So I know there's a question about doors in the comments, but I actually have to run real quick. My dog is locked in a room somewhere, and I gotta go find him because he is barking at this point. So I will be right back.
Okay.
All right. So we had been talking about taxes, where it comes from, transactions, all that kind of stuff, and guild districts. A lot of that ties into as well about like guild leadership and like what kind of powers people have. Will there actually be different ways to do guild governance? Such as in guild ranks, there's usually like a guild lead, there's officers, there's sub officers, there's normal members, and maybe even trials or anything like that for being in a guild. What kind of ranks are there, and are there actually ways to make like a triumvirate, like a multi-tiered system where multiple people have power at the top?
It's a good question. The person who founds the guild is the guild master. There is
Mhm.
one guild master. But after that, I have, at this point, put in 2 default classes that you can assign, and I don't have the assigning part built yet, but I'll show you what I've got. Um, officers and members would be the next 2 tiers at this point.
Mhm.
The officers are going to have a few more permissions by default, but we're also going to make it completely configurable. So you'll be able to create your own custom roles or ranks, your choice in which word you want to use, with a slate of permissions and assign those permissions to the roles and then give the roles to your members. So if you want to create a rank that effectively has all the permissions of the guild master, you are welcome to do so and have a be able to do everything. Right now I have the officers set up to do some of those roles, but not all of them. And the only thing that I think the guild master can't be kicked out of the guild. I think that's going to be the only like red flag. Now, I have considered what that means for a situation where you have a guild, it's going along well, you've been playing for a couple months, guild master leaves.
Mhm.
What do you do? Obviously, you can appeal to the dev team and say, "Hey guys, our guild master's AFK, and we need, you know, make a database change." Could that happen? Yes. I would prefer to build something in the game so you guys can handle that yourselves. And if that's like a nomination like a nomination process where you basically somebody says my guild master is AFK and we put in a certain amount of time passes, that would then allow you guys to pick a new guild master, something like that.
Mhm.
Um, I have not built that yet, but I think that's something we probably should do eventually, because otherwise you're going to get into a situation where, maybe you decide to quit after a year playing the game and you've got a big guild and all these other people are depending on you, and that would be unfortunate unless you were nice enough to assign someone else that role later. Um, so yeah, I have thought about that, and that's something we're going to try to tackle. But with the configurability, you'll be able to create people with the roles you want them to have and name them whatever you want to. So
Yeah, and as time goes on, and after this goes on the test server, there's obviously going to be more feedback that goes through to allow us to see where that goes. Um, Last 2 things that we had before we actually got you to show off what you had so far were a couple of more questions on fluff, but definitely important for the pride of a guild. Um, what are the kind of social features that are going to be adding in for guilds? Is there new chat tabs going in for not only guilds but other features of the game?
there definitely will be a guild chat. We're thinking of tabbing it out. So that is planned. So that's where I'd start with that. There'll be a lot of other activities though, like guild quests, dungeons, guild versus guild rating. So it won't be just, hey, I can chat with you guys and not everybody else now. That'll be one thing for sure. But then there'll actually be things that you can do as a guild together, which should be social too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know Hudy mentioned potentially being able to have multiple people in combat at the same time. I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not with the combat rework, but if that's something that does end up happening, I could see it making its way into guilds as one of those sorts of features.
Yeah, the stuff that's actually been claimed as future features of guilds is definitely the reason why I started playing the game in the first place. Doing guild dungeons, especially me being a cook, I really wanted to actually feed an entire raid's worth of people. That's kind of my thing. Um, but as far as the last thing we actually had as for a question on this, um, is there going to be a guild logo that you're going to be able to see on a splash screen, or are you going to be able to see those in other places like a player profile?
Yes, and I will show you what I've got so far. At this point, they're going to be the there's a static list of logos, and you can pick from one. It's a fairly good sized list. That'll get you started. I think as a premium feature later, we will probably add the ability to upload anything you want as a guild logo as long as it conforms to the right specs. So by default, to start, we're going to have a static list, but then later you would, if for whatever nominal fee we decide on, it would be, you can customize that. So as a premium feature, and yeah, we'll get into premium features another time. But that's just one of those that we're kind of pre-planning to be able to do.
All right, so let's actually get a sneak peek at what we're actually looking at. Potentially test server within a few weeks, maybe? Soon, TM?
I'm hoping sooner than that, honestly. All right, let's go back here. Little screen share. Let's see if you guys can see this or not.
Now I don't have a nice little transition or stage set up for this, so let's see how well this works.
You guys can look at this instead of my.
Oh gosh, it's so blurry.
I think without Nitro, I can only screen share at 720p.
I can read that, but the font is definitely not friendly for this. But we can try to have you narrate what's going on as you're going through.
Let me resize this and see if I can blow it up full screen or something.
Yeah, I got an idea too.
Not the nicest of transitions ever. Sorry about that, guys. All right.
Let's try this one. Is that any better?
Yeah, give me a sec. I'm gonna set up a new capture here. Let me go. No, not that one. It used to be if I just clicked on someone. Stand by for. Oh well, I'll blow it up and see how far we get with this. Ah, yeah, a little better.
Switch to a lower res monitor. All right.
If you can control plus that into oblivion, that might help a little bit.
Is that readable?
A little bit.
Honestly, I haven't tried it with Zoom, so I'm kind of terrified about what that might do to all my CSS. All right, well, let's jump in. So this is my local dev instance, so don't get all, if anybody sees Leo amounts that don't match up with what they have on production, don't worry about that. It's a little bit out of date from a data perspective, so. But all right, so let's go into the cities. Which one would you like to look at first? Take a pick.
Let's go with Cowan.
Okay. So you jump in here, and there's now a guild district. You'll find these in each of the cities. As you enter, you'll find that I have not created any guilds in this city. And it tells you as much. There's a create guild option here, which would allow you to do that. So let me just do that real quick. Okay, should be able to do this now. All right, so if we create a guild, it's going to open up a modal dialog with the district that you're creating your guild in. You can name it whatever you might like. Do I have any suggestions from the peanut gallery?
It'll take about 30 seconds round trip for one.
I'll hold.
We might get some stuff that's not safe for work.
Yes, we need some guild suggestions here, like Gildy McGuildface.
Oh, that's a good one. How about
Zyra?
the amazing Ginyu Force? Okay, there we go.
Let's call it Reddit. Lollipop Kids.
Okay, so you fill in your guild name, you pick a guild tag. No brackets are necessary, as mentioned there, but we'll display them as necessary other places. We don't want to store the brackets in the database. Description if you want. And then this is still under construction this little bit, but it will let you pick one of these different icons for your guild.
It's like being back in MS Word all over again.
Yeah, like
Clip
I
art
said,
gallery.
you'll have a lot of different choices, but one of the premium features will be to upload whatever you want on your own. So that'll be, I'm sure that will happen soon. But so you pick one. There's a cost. You have a current amount of leol in this account. I have a little over 2 million of it, so I can cover that. So I'm going to create this guild, and then boom, your guild is going to be, and any guilds that you have invitations or memberships or petitions for would be at this top and highlightable. You'll be able to enter it here or at your profile. In addition, this would be a list of other guilds that would be in the city. So at the moment, there's only one. I know that looks a little odd with the two repeated like that, but you'll see like, hundreds of guilds here. So let's take a look. Let's go on in. Entering our guild. And we have an icon by default, and right now they're all getting set to the B because I don't have that part implemented yet, but it tells you what your name is as a guild. You can see the various breadcrumbs are correct so that you could go back to your guild district if you want to. You are able to leave a guild. It will prompt you. So it's not just insta-death, but once you're gone, it's permanent, so think twice about that. Your membership will be listed here regardless of, so I created this guild just now. I'm the guild master for this guild, but someone else to join later would be of a different rank, by default a member, which is one of those standard guild ranks. From that point, you'd have to modify their membership, which will be accessible here later. So in this case, it's going to list all the people in your guild and then have a section of pending guild request, which could be one of two forms. And so let's just leave this guild and see what happens. Oh man, so now you're able to see, but there's no membership in this guild. You're not able to do anything with it. So we were to go back here. Now, because you had an existing membership, it's going to remember that and allow you to petition to rejoin your guild. If you do that, you'll have a pending petition to the guild. And I'll show you a little later what that looks like on the inside, but I can't be the petitioner and the guild leader at the same time. So it'll be in a different spot. I have some of the others cities set up to show these different interactions. If you weren't a member of the guild, you could petition it, and then it would go into this petitioning status. So let's back out into one of the other cities. Let's say Lohenheim for the moment. Their guild district, and I already have a guild created there. This one's not as well named though. Now this guild has sent me an invitation to join. So if I accept this invitation, then I will become part of the guild. If I reject it, this goes away and I will not be anymore. So let's accept that invitation. And now I have successfully joined the guild. I can now enter it. Now this one I had originally set up myself, so I gave myself the rank of guild master already. But you see how that can work. So so let's explore for a little bit here. So let's go over to profile. Do you happen to know what your user number is off the top of your head, guys?
660.
660. All right, so here's Stretch. And we're going to go over and you'll find a new guild tab on their profile page. And he's not currently a guild member. and I am currently a guild member with authorization to invite people because I'm a guild master. The officers, I believe, are also currently able to do that. So I would click invite to my guild, and if I was allowed to do so, it would say that they were successfully invited. Now, that would then on their guild page show up as an invitation, and they could accept that invitation. And so at this point, it's a little difficult to scroll through the whole list of users in the database to say I want to invite this guy and this guy. So the way I've got it currently set up is that you can, from their profile, invite them to your guild, the one that you're a part of. Now, if I were to go back to my profile and go in here, you'll see it does tell me that I'm part of a guild and what that information is. So the description of the guild, my rank in it, and where it's actually located, and allow me to enter my guild from that point. You'll also see that I invited Stretch to join my guild.
Woo!
But you know what?
No.
Although Stretch and I are
No.
really good friends,
No.
I'm gonna have to withdraw that invite.
Wrecked.
So I've dismissed it. He's no longer invited, and there are no pending guild requests at this point. I'm gonna just leave this guild for the moment here.
That's not the version of Stretch you'd want anyway. He only has Mastery 4 and Pine on that server, most likely.
This is probably even less than that. This is some of my data is a little bit out of date because it's such a pain to move the database copies over. It's easy enough to keep up the migrations, but all right. So let's move on from that. So we're gonna head back to cities. I'm gonna show you the guild because I was playing around with this one to get some of the create page working. So I have quite a few created there. So just take that in for a second. This is probably what you'll see as a standard user when you come in without a guild affiliation. You'll see a bunch of different guilds. They're all different petitions. There might be some more information we want to add here later, like capacity or something like that. But at this point, this is what I've got. So if we wanted to petition one of these, we would just say we wanted to join the Gangrene Gang. We could petition that, and then you'd see our petition show up here. And the nice thing is that let's say that we're not sure if they're going to accept us. We could petition a couple of these guys and have a couple of them outstanding. Now, once you have a active guild membership, you are not allowed to petition. They are not allowed to invite you. And if they also were to have a pending petition from you, but you've already joined somebody else's guild and they try to accept you, it won't let them do that because you're already part of a guild. So it is you can petition a bunch, but then once you're in, you're in. And then they'll start rejecting your petitions from inside the guild instead, which is probably what you want. So let's head back to Necropolis since we haven't visited that yet. In the Necropolis Guild District, I have the Foot Clan here, which I've previously been a member of. And I'm going to do some magic in the database, and you didn't see that. Oh, I'm a member of the Foot Clan already. So I'm gonna go in there, and you'll see that, oh look, Hudy wants to join the guild, and I can choose to confirm or dismiss that. If I dismiss it, it goes away. It goes off of his invitation screen as well. He won't see it anymore as a pending petition. These are some invites I have sent to other people. So if I were to confirm him, though, everything works right, which it did not because he's already in another guild. That's true. That's good. That's what I wanted to have happen there. So he is currently a member of which guild?
If you give me 1 sec, I'm gonna try and fix this because it's super low res. So if I don't know.
He's current. He's currently in the Shadow Warriors Guild. Well, we can fix that.
Here, just give me 1 sec.
The great thing about creating all your own guild names is that you can decide. All right, so he's no longer in that guild. So now if I were to confirm him, he's confirmed. You see he gets added to the guild membership list, and his pending request went away. So that's a lot of great interaction in terms of being able to join and have those update that you guys are going to need to be able to manage your guilds correctly. I will definitely do this management so that you can do roles as well, or different ranks within your guild and what permissions they have. And then obviously, as you can see, there's a large space in this guild that is not being currently occupied by anything. And there are a lot of fun features that we've mentioned that are going to fill this up. So we're just scratching the surface at this point. But at this point, you do have guild membership. You can mess around with your roster. The districts are in pretty good shape too. So that's pretty much where we're at this point. Let's see. You have any questions that I can help with?
Yeah, one more so for management and bug fix. How long is an empty guild going to actually remain open before the server actually kills it? Because I know that after you leave and you're the guild lead and it still shows, there's no way for you to rejoin unless a mod actually brings you back in. So if someone actually, causes you to do so, or you do so on accident of leaving, I think it'll be open for like a day before it actually, kills the guild.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that we're going to have to figure out. We don't want a bunch of guilds that are unoccupied, for instance, by anyone floating around, because that doesn't really serve anybody's benefit. That might be one of those situations where if it's an empty guild and you petition it, you just get to be the guild master. And that would kind of solve that problem. I hadn't thought of that until just now, but I think I'm going to write that one down.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that does solve at least one of the two problems. The other one being, though, if your guild master leaves, but the rest of the guild wants to stick around, what do you do? I mean, I guess with that, if I were just to implement that piece of logic that I said, you guys could all leave and then have one person quickly rejoin and take ownership. I don't think that's ideal, though. So I do want to look at that as a potential solution that I need to come up with as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, those are definitely the things I'm considering.
All right, looks like we've got some questions in chat here.
All right, fire away.
Let's see. We can make officers and or co-leaders of the guild, right? Question mark.
Correct. By default, I have 3 positions: a guild master, an officer, and a member. Everybody who initially joins a guild will be brought in as a member with no permissions other than membership. It'll be up to the guild master and any officers that they deem, and they'll be able to create custom ranks and roles within the guild as well. So it's not as if they're locked into that. But at that point, when you first are added, you won't be able to just jump in and then steal everything out of their bank either.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's one concern I've heard voiced. So, whether you add them, maybe you make the member role only have a limited amount of things that they can withdraw from the bank initially until you kind of trust them a little bit more. I don't know. That's completely up to you guys. But they're going to come in as members, and then whatever you decide to create or call them after that is going to be up to you with whatever permission set you want on top of it. So it's going to be pretty dynamic.
Right. And Zero's question on here, It's a little bit more complex, and I think it's mostly going to be answered in a future video of ours or when it goes on the test server. But the initial question is, are we going to have a system that is apart from housing, but also allow us as a guild function to work towards, I think he's meaning something like guild passives, where contributions from guild members will actually start working towards unlocking those passives. I think that's something that we can actually look forward to and discussing once it's on the test server, but not anytime soon. I think is that going to be in development.
I don't think that's the next thing. I mean, the guild bank actually, I'll probably do the managing permissions next, and then after that, the guild bank with the message of the day and guild chat closely following. Those are probably the next couple of features to go. You know, message of the day is not that hard. Guild chat, moderate, and then the bank's going to be a pretty tough one. But those are the three things that I'll probably get into next. And then after that, once you guys can get together, start sharing resources, then we can start adding on all the real fun features that are going to make it not just organizationally beneficial to be in a guild, but fun too.
Yeah, I definitely look forward to it. Sounds like a really exciting system to actually get people engaged into the game a little bit more.
Right. And back to that one question earlier, if you want to lone wolf it, that's totally okay. There was some talk and plans potentially to make a like default guild. That's maybe something we might still look at doing, just so that you can kind of still do guild quests and participate in some of the other guild activities without feeling like you need, like maybe the default guild doesn't have a guild chat because you don't really want to talk to all those other people. You just want to be able to do the quests and some of these other things. That's something we can do kind of to make sure that there aren't parts of the game locked away from people who just don't really want to mess with, 15 other people that are very hardcore and you want to just do what you want to do. Or maybe you don't want your own guild by yourself and you want some of those benefits still. So that's an idea that we might explore too. And that would just kind of be a stripped down version that doesn't have, actually probably wouldn't have a guild bank in that case, and you wouldn't have the guild chat either, potentially. But you have access to some of those other features. So we'll maybe talk about that later when we have more of those features to potentially lock out in that situation.
Yeah, we could definitely bring you back in for another video at any point, or we can actually just do our speculation video when it's up on test server. We're going to be putting a lot of hours into that when it comes out.
Yep, definitely. And when I do get the guild bank set up and working, maybe you should have me back on for another one, and we'll show you how all the fun interactions that can do.
Sure, invite yourself back. That's cool.
Is that okay? I thought it'd be okay.
All right. Let's see. Looks like some of these other questions have been answered kind of in passing. Anything else in chat? Any other questions that y'all have?
I can tell you there will be some transaction logging, especially around the bank. So you'll be able to get an idea of what's going in and what's coming out. I know one of the features that was talked about was the ability to potentially donate your gathering directly to the guild bank. I know that's still planned. And I think that will be, I haven't decided whether I want that to be configurable at the time of gather or set up. I'd rather have it set up within the guild. So you'll actually see I think I'm going to have it configurable within the guild so that you'll be able to see who has currently set up to have their ticks go to the bank directly. So that's something that the guild master will be able to see. So then it would be less like, I know there were some questions about management and seeing how often they were online or whatnot, but if that setting were enabled within the guild, if they were doing any ticks, you'd see the bank filling up with their resources, which probably would take care of a lot of those issues.
Yeah, that absolutely would be great in terms of getting guild transactions off the market. As Erasmus is saying. So we've done some more personal questions with the other developers. I just had a couple for you. Some things I wanted to point out. It was mentioned before that you had talking about clicky keyboards and how Roarbee is a fan of those. And I pointed out that in the mirror behind you, you can actually see part of your monitor array. Now, I know that's something you're quite proud of.
This is true. I have a 2x2 grid. I do not necessarily have the latest and greatest technology, but I'm only a few generations behind. I can give you a little.
Yeah, it's only an i7 2700.
That's better than 2700. Yeah, I have a NVIDIA 1070. I do have a 2K monitor, don't have anything 4K yet, and 3 1080p monitors, one of which is a touchscreen, which is only moderately useful in a desktop situation. I found much better on like a tablet or laptop than this, but it was kind of a fun buy anyway. So
yeah. So tell us some of your background in terms of things that might be pertinent to the work you're doing now in game. Like where'd you go
sure.
to school? What do you do? Do you have any weird sword collections or anything like that?
I do actually have a sword collection. They're like wall hanging collectibles type things. I bought I bought them in Asia when I was there for a bit. They are currently mothballed in a closet though because I have a family and they are prone to getting into things. So they are safely put away. But in
Good
terms,
tactic for keeping that family.
yeah, they don't look. CPS doesn't look fondly of. Oh, the sword fell off the wall, and that'd be bad. So my background, I went to school for computer science at Rochester Institute of Technology, Rochester, New York. I've been a developer for over 10 years. I actually just started a new job recently. It's going well.
It's funny you mentioned RIT because you, Hudy, and I all went there, and at the time neither of us knew each other. So
It is pretty funny, yeah. We probably crossed paths a few times and just didn't have any idea.
yeah.
So yeah, it was a good education, I think, and I've been able to hold down a job since then. So it did what I wanted it to do.
They're asking what's in the background hanging from the ceiling. I said it's a swing, but not that kind of swing.
It is a swing. That if so, for my shoulder, you'll notice there's a like a mat there, like one of those gym mats. I do have a family, and they are taking gymnastics. So I have a pair of rings, which are hooked to the sidewall right now, and a swing, and they can do tumbling and stuff there, and they have a lot of fun with it. And it's actually great because I live in a Rochester, if you're not familiar, it's a cold winter, a cold long winter potentially. So it's just kind of gives my kids a chance to get their energy out indoors in a slightly more constructive way than destroying my house. So that's what that's for. That is a swing, but it's the capacity on those carabiners that are holding it up, I think, is like 110 pounds. So that would probably be better if it was just used for kids.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm not seeing any other like relevant questions coming in chat. Anything else from you guys? Final words, final questions?
Favorite food, Constrictor? Is it waffles, pancakes, or seared salmon?
Ooh, man, you're not even close. Although if I had to pick between waffles and pancakes, it's always waffles.
Good man.
Yeah. Favorite fruit would be strawberries.
Swipe left, swipe left.
I do not care for long walks on the beach, though.
Yeah, typically when you ask someone from Rochester what their favorite food is, you're going to either hear pizza or garbage plate, but you're not native, so
I like the garbage plate. You can look it up, Rochester garbage plate. It's great. It's just a lot of food. So it really is.
Chat says your favorite food has salt in it because
Probably.
you're a dev.
yes.
I'm a fan of red meat, so sorry to all you vegetarians out there.
Oh, you had to go there.
I have no shame in that sense. I love my grill, and
So, Sweet is asking, how did you meet Hudy?
through Stretch, I believe.
And probably also Tom, too.
I believe you invited
Maybe.
him over and us over at the same time. Might have been that. Do you remember that day there was like a crazy lightning storm that was? Oh well, he invited us both over at the same time, and I think I had gamed with him
Oh,
previously
yeah.
online.
I remember
So
that. We were going to grill outside and got totally washed out.
yeah, that was fun. Um,
You know, that does bring up a good point. There should be vegetarian dishes. The cook should be able to cook vegetarian dishes.
I will make a note. um,
Perhaps less fish in everything.
hmm,
How long have we known each other? Probably, I think it was about 10 years.
yeah, probably at least that.
Yeah.
Now they're asking for gluten free. I think this is where we wrap that up.
Tofu.
You know what the great thing is? There's item renames, so you can rename your axe to be like the gluten-free axe of impaling or something, and it'll be great.
You can't rename your food though, can you?
I don't think so, but that's okay. Um,
What if I wanted to rename it to the garbage plate? I mean, you don't
you know,
have that in the game right now.
that's true. We don't have that in the game. I bet Roarbee would have a problem with that, because although it's one of those like things that we all share to a degree, um, except Roarbee actually, because he's not from Rochester. Um, it's not really lore correct, which is where he would probably throw up a red flag on that one.
True.
Although if you guys can figure out a way to make the garbage plate lore specific and get him to agree to it, we'll get it in the game.
Challenge accepted.
So to go full on internet pander mode, this is the dog that got locked behind a gate and started howling. Is this Hootie? No, this is not Hootie.
That would be pretty funny though.
I can see the resemblance though.
Yes, that's Max. Okay, so let's wrap up. So we covered guilds in the depth that we can tonight. Pretty much everything's subject to change. Apologies again for the low quality of like 90% of that screen share. I didn't know it was going to happen, so I just kind of stretched and dragged and uh, didn't quite work. So maybe I don't know. If we do a follow up on the testing server or something, we'll have a walkthrough. Um, as always, keep these guys in mind. They're doing this pro bono out of the goodness of their hearts. They're devoting their time, efforts, and energies and paycheck into keeping this game going. So it's always worth it to um, be active in Discord, be active on Reddit. Well, I mean, eh. Um, but most importantly, like this game is going places, and we want to help support these guys. Not them specifically, but the servers that the game runs on. Make their lives easier. We want to get art assets in. There's a Patreon. I'll link it in the description once this goes on YouTube. Um, they don't ask us to say this, but we like to include it because I think it's worth it. I donate. You know, I find great value and enjoyment in this game, so I encourage everyone else to as well. Um, we'll post this on YouTube, get some links like we usually do, and have a new video up here shortly for you guys.
Yep. Thanks for watching and joining us, as well as supplying some questions. Post some comments with additional questions on the YouTube video once it's posted, and maybe we'll actually put that in a follow-up or respond to them directly.
Yep, and we'll have Constrictor back here shortly, and maybe bring Hudy and Roarbee back on, and uh, maybe we'll do a 5-person conversation at some point and just be totally outnumbered. Um, so be prepared to sit through a 3-hour presentation if that's the case. But all right, thank you all for joining us, especially on tonight. Busy day. Get some rest. Start the week out well. Um, so this is Stretch signing off.
This is Devon.
Constrictor 14.
All right. Have a good night, guys, and master everything.